It's always the quiet drives that stay with you, the ones where the road feels longer than it should, where the hum of the tires becomes the only sound left in the world. Late at night, when the air is cold and heavy enough to fog the windshield, the world outside the headlights stops feeling real. The towns pass by like forgotten postcards, the gas stations glow faintly in the distance, and the rest of the world seems to fold into darkness. That's when the silence starts to change, soft, steady, like it's listening. You tell yourself it's nothing, just the rhythm of the engine, the echo of the road, the way fatigue can make shadows move. But every driver knows the feeling that comes right before something's wrong. The shift in pressure, the air growing too still, the headlights catching something just a few seconds too late. Maybe it's a flicker of movement on the shoulder, a hand raised from the dark, or the glint of eyes that shouldn't be there. Tonight's stories are about those moments when people slowed down, when instinct whispered to stop, and when they learned what waits on the side of the road isn't always asking for help. These are the true accounts from those who stopped too late. It was late November, a little past 1 in the morning, when I took Route 9 home from a job I never liked. The town I worked in was small enough that the streets went quiet after 10, but the highway was always awake, humming with the sound of passing semis, the occasional rush of headlights, and that endless black ribbon stretching through the pines. I'd been driving that route for years. It cut 20 minutes off my commute, and at that hour, it felt like I was the only person left alive. The air was cold that night, heavy with fog that rolled low to the ground, and the radio had faded into static miles ago. The only light came from my high beams cutting through the mist in front of me. I remember feeling calm, almost lulled by the repetition of it all. The steady hum of the tires, the faint vibration through the steering wheel, the small comfort of routine. Then, out of nowhere, I saw movement on the shoulder. A figure walking along the edge of the road just inside the fog line. At first, I thought it was a trick of the headlights, maybe a mailbox or a road sign catching the light. But as I got closer, I could see it clearly, a man, tall and thin, wearing a dark jacket with the collar turned up. He was walking with a limp, one arm hanging lower than the other, head slightly tilted down as if the ground had more to say than the world around him. My first instinct was confusion. That stretch of Route 9 ran for miles between towns, no sidewalks, no houses, nothing but forest and the occasional ditch. Nobody walked there, especially not at that hour. I slowed down a little, debating whether I should stop or at least check if he needed help, but something about him made me hesitate. It wasn't fear exactly, just that quiet instinct that says, keep driving. I couldn't explain it, but every part of me felt like stopping would be a mistake. Still, guilt has a way of catching up to you faster than common sense. As my headlights passed him, I caught a glimpse of his face, pale, hollow, expressionless. His eyes flicked toward me, but only slightly, like he wasn't really seeing me. That moment burned into my mind, the way light hits something dead and makes it look alive for half a second. I drove past, my chest tight, my hands gripping the wheel too hard. As I told myself I'd turn around at the next mile marker, check on him, maybe call it in if something felt off. The fog thickened as I drove, swallowing the road behind me. I passed one of the green signs, mile 47, and slowed to make the U-turn. My headlights swept across the trees as I turned back, carving out a narrow tunnel of light through the mist. The stretch of road looked empty now. No figure, no movement. I told myself he must have walked off into the woods, maybe to find shelter, maybe to rest. I kept going another mile, scanning the shoulder, still nothing. Then up ahead, I saw something glint on the ground, a small reflection, like metal catching light. I slowed to a crawl and rolled the window down. It was quiet enough that I could hear the soft ticking of my engine. When I stepped out, the air hit me cold and still. I could smell wet asphalt and something faintly sour like rain that had been sitting too long in the ditches. I walked a few feet forward, shining my phone flashlight toward the object. It was a keychain, a small metal tag shaped like a gas pump. Something someone might have picked up at a station decades ago. I turned it over, expecting a logo, but there was nothing. Just a faint engraving that looked like a number 47. The same as the mile marker. I looked around, half expecting to see movement in the fog. The sound of my own breathing felt too loud. Then I heard it, a faint, dragging sound, not close but not far either, the kind of noise made by someone walking with one foot heavier than the other. I froze. The sound came again, soft, steady, from somewhere behind me on the opposite shoulder. I turned the flashlight, sweeping it across the mist. For a second, I saw the outline of someone, the shape of a man standing still. My throat went dry. Hey, I called out, trying to sound casual. The figure didn't move. I took a step toward the road, but the beam of light flickered, and in that moment of darkness, I heard something shift. When the light steadied, the road was empty again. No figure, just fog curling across the asphalt. I backed toward my car, that instinct from earlier screaming louder now. I got in, locked the doors, and sat there for a few seconds with the headlights off, trying to steady my breathing. The road outside was silent, too silent. When I finally turned the headlights back on, my heart nearly stopped. There were wet footprints on the pavement, trailing from the shoulder to the center line. Not just one set, two, side by side, like someone had been walking with me. The tracks ended right at the front of my car. I shifted into drive and pulled away faster than I should have, watching in the rearview mirror as the fog swallowed the road again. The next morning, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd imagined it, that maybe exhaustion had gotten to me. But around noon, I saw a post online from the local paper. It was short, maybe 4 sentences. Authorities investigating possible hit-and-run on Route 9 near mile 47. Victim identified as local mechanic, 42-year-old male. Accident likely occurred between midnight and 1 a.m. My stomach dropped. The description matched the man exactly, the jacket, the height, everything. I couldn't stop thinking about how long I'd hesitated before turning around, how I'd driven past him without stopping. That night, I drove the long way home, avoiding Route 9 completely. A few weeks later, guilt got the better of me. I decided to leave flowers near the spot. It felt like the least I could do. I drove out there just after sunset, the sky still holding on to the last bit of light. I parked near the shoulder, stepped out, and placed the flowers near the ditch. The road was quiet again, the air colder than I remembered. I stayed there for a moment, just looking down the long stretch of highway, and that's when I heard it, soft footsteps behind me. Slow, uneven. Dragging slightly. I turned around fast, but there was no one there, just the whisper of wind moving through the trees. Then, faintly, I heard another sound, the creak of a door. I looked toward my car. The driver's door was open. I didn't remember unlocking it. I ran back, slammed it shut, and drove off without looking back. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the wheel. In the rearview mirror, for one fleeting moment, I thought I saw someone walking along the shoulder again, just like before, the same slow, limping stride, the same bowed head. But this time, I didn't turn around. It's been years since that night, and I still take the long route home. Every now and then, though, I'll catch a headline about another accident on Route 9, another driver who swerved to avoid something in the fog. They never find what caused it. And when I see those stories, I wonder if the man I saw ever really left that stretch of road, or if he's still out there, walking, waiting for someone else who's just a little too late to stop. It was early January when it happened. One of those bitter winter nights where the cold feels like it's pressing against your bones, and the whole world moves slower because of it. I was driving home from my parents' place after visiting for the holidays, taking the back highway like I always did. The interstate was faster, sure, but I'd always preferred the quiet of the rural roads. There's something peaceful about being the only car for miles, the headlights stretching ahead into the dark, the hum of the tires the only sound breaking the silence. That night, the snow had been falling for hours, fine and steady, covering the world in a dull white shimmer. My wipers squeaked across the glass every few seconds, a rhythmic sound that filled the silence between breaths. It was just after midnight when I saw it, a faint, flashing orange light ahead, half hidden behind a bend. At first, I thought it might be a snowplow or maybe another driver pulled over with their hazards on. I slowed down instinctively, tires crunching over ice. As I came around the curve, I saw the car, a small silver sedan, half sunk in a shallow ditch, its hazard lights pulsing dimly through the fog. The driver's side door was open, the dome light inside flickering weakly like it couldn't decide whether to stay on or die out completely. I slowed to a crawl, hesitating. My first thought was that someone might be hurt, but something about the scene didn't sit right. The way the car was angled, too straight, too deliberately parked, didn't look like an accident. There were no skid marks, no broken glass, no sign of an impact, just a car sitting in the ditch like it had been placed there carefully. The snow on the road was undisturbed except for my own tire tracks. I stopped a few yards away and turned down the radio. The silence outside was absolute, no wind, no sound of the engine running, nothing. I could feel my heartbeat pick up, small and sharp against the quiet. I debated for a minute whether to get out or not. Logic told me someone might need help, but there was a heaviness to the air, that kind of wrong silence that makes you hesitate even before you know why. I rolled the window down a few inches. The cold bit at my face immediately, sharp and clean, and the only sound was the faint clicking of the hazard lights echoing through the stillness. I called out, "Hello, you all right?" My voice came out louder than I meant it to. No answer. Just that slow, rhythmic blink from the lights. I sat there for a few more seconds, feeling stupid for being scared. Then I told myself I'd just get out, take a quick look, and call for help if no one was around. I grabbed my phone, slipped on my jacket, and stepped out into the cold. The snow crunched under my boots, a sound that somehow felt too loud for such an empty place. The wind was still, but I could feel it in the air, like the world was holding its breath. My flashlight beam shook slightly as I walked closer to the car. The footprints caught my eye first. They started near the open driver's door, one set deep and uneven, and trailed off toward the tree line. Whoever it was, they hadn't gone far and they hadn't been gone long. The snow hadn't covered them yet. I leaned down to look inside the car. The engine was off. The keys were still in the ignition. The interior was clean, almost too clean, except for a phone sitting face down in the cup holder and a half-empty water bottle on the passenger seat. As I called out again, a little quieter this time, "Hey, I'm here to help you out there." That's when I heard it, a faint sound, not quite a voice, not quite the wind coming from the direction of the trees. It was soft, almost like someone whispering under their breath. I straightened up, shining the light toward the woods, but the beam only hit the first few trunks before fading into darkness. The whispering stopped. For a second, I wondered if I'd imagined it, if maybe it was just the sound of my own breathing bouncing back at me through the cold. I turned toward the car again, and that's when I noticed it. The hazard lights weren't flashing anymore. I hadn't heard them stop. The car sat there in silence now, its lights off, its reflection faintly visible in the snow. I took a step back, feeling my pulse in my throat. My flashlight flickered just once, then came back on. I turned toward my car, suddenly aware of how far I'd walked from it, maybe 30, 40 feet. My breath came out in thick, uneven clouds. The stillness pressed down on me like a weight, and then from the trees came the sound again, louder this time. A whisper that rose into something like a word. Oh, wait. I froze. The voice sounded close, too close. It was a man's voice, low and hoarse, like someone who hadn't spoken in a while. I turned toward the sound, shining the flashlight wildly across the trees. Nothing, just the faint outlines of branches and snow. "Who's there?" I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. No answer. But then footsteps. Slow, deliberate, crunching through the snow toward me. I backed away instinctively, my light darting between the trees, searching for movement. The sound of the footsteps stopped when my beam hit the edge of the woods. My chest felt tight, every instinct screaming to leave. I turned, started walking quickly toward my car, trying not to break into a run. That's when I heard something else behind me from the ditch. The sound of a car door closing. I stopped, every nerve in my body pulling tight. Slowly, I turned the flashlight back toward the silver sedan. The driver's door was shut now, completely closed. I hadn't touched it. My mouth went dry. I took a step back, then another, until I was close enough to my car to grab the handle. My fingers were stiff from the cold, but I yanked the door open, jumped in, and slammed it shut. The sound of my own heartbeat filled the silence. I locked the doors, started the engine, and flipped on my headlights. The silver car lit up ahead of me, every detail sharp and wrong under the glare. The driver's seat was empty. The hazard lights blinked once slowly, then went dark again. I didn't wait, I drove, fast. The tires slipped once on the icy road before catching, and I didn't look back until I hit the main intersection 15 minutes later. My hands were shaking on the wheel. I called 911, breathless, trying to explain what I'd seen or what I thought I'd seen. The dispatcher sounded calm, too calm. She asked me to describe the location, then said, "You're not the first call we've had about that car tonight." That sentence made something cold crawl up my spine. "What do you mean?" I asked. "There's been reports since early evening," she said. "Police checked it twice, nothing there. Every time we send someone, the car, gone." I didn't say anything else. I just hung up. The next morning, I took the longer route to work, the one that avoided that stretch of highway entirely. But as I passed the overpass where Route 9 splits, I saw something that made my stomach turn. Parked on the shoulder, half buried in snow, was the same silver sedan. No hazard lights this time, just stillness. I slowed down for a moment, staring. There was no one inside. But in the faint frost on the driver's window, written in the fog, was a single word. "Well, wait." I haven't taken that road again since. But sometimes, on cold nights when I'm driving home late, I'll see flashing orange lights in the distance, dim, steady, rhythmic. And even when I know they belong to someone else, I can't shake the feeling that somewhere out there, that car is still waiting, its door half open, its engine silent, its driver standing just out of sight, whispering to anyone who comes too close. It was early spring when it happened, that quiet in-between time when the days start getting longer, but the nights still carry the chill of winter. I was driving cross-country for work, hauling equipment between small towns that looked almost identical once the sun went down. That night, I was somewhere in the middle of nowhere, a rural stretch between two highways in southern Montana. The kind of road that winds through open fields and forest patches, where radio signals die and the only light is whatever your headlights can reach. It was close to 2 a.m., the kind of hour when your brain feels soft and the world feels smaller. I remember the hum of the tires more than anything, that rhythmic sound you stop noticing until silence creeps in between rotations. I wasn't in a rush. I'd already driven 10 hours that day, and I was planning to pull into a rest stop after the next town. My thermos of coffee sat cooling beside me, the lid rattling slightly every time the truck hit a bump. I kept the heater low because the air outside was cold and still, the kind of cold that seeps through the window seals and makes you feel watched somehow, though you know you're alone. It was on one of those empty stretches, the kind that feels suspended from time, that I first saw her. She was standing on the side of the road beneath a flickering streetlight, where the forest line broke open just enough to make space for a narrow service road. She couldn't have been more than 17, maybe 18. Her jacket was pale off-white and her hair looked dark against it. She was facing away from me, one arm hanging loose, the other slightly lifted, like she was hitchhiking, though she didn't move when my headlights hit her. I slowed down instinctively, my heart giving a small, uncertain flutter. Out here, people sometimes needed help. And something about the stillness of her, the way she didn't turn, didn't even flinch at the sound of my engine, made the moment stretch too long. I rolled down my window halfway as I passed, calling out, "You okay?" My voice came out rough from hours of not speaking. The girl didn't answer, she didn't even move. I slowed down more, just enough to keep her in the rearview mirror, and that's when I realized something that made my skin prickle. Her reflection in the mirror wasn't right. The way the light hit her, her shape seemed slightly off, like the shadows around her didn't belong to the same space. It looked as though she was standing just behind where the reflection said she was. I pulled over a few yards ahead, trying to tell myself I was being ridiculous. Maybe she was in shock. Maybe she'd been in an accident. I grabbed my flashlight, stepped out of the truck, and immediately felt the cold crawl over me, sharp, wet, alive. The world went silent the second my boots hit the gravel. No wind, no bugs, not even the faint hum of the highway behind me. I called out again. "Hey, you need help." My breath came out in a pale cloud that drifted upward, then hung in the air longer than it should have. The girl didn't respond, but as I walked closer, I started hearing something faint, not words, not movement, but breathing. It wasn't mine. It came in slow, shallow waves, like someone trying to stay quiet while hiding. My flashlight beam wobbled slightly as I aimed it toward the streetlight, but when the light caught her, I froze. Her head was tilted down, chin to chest, as if she were asleep standing up. The hair on the back of my neck rose. "Miss," I said again, softer this time. Oh, she lifted her head. Her face was pale, not just from the cold, but drained, almost translucent. Her lips were slightly parted, and her eyes, they didn't catch the light the way eyes should. They reflected it like glass, completely white for a second before they blinked, slow and wrong. That single blink broke something inside me. My chest tightened and instinct screamed at me to leave. I stumbled backward, the beam shaking as I tried to keep it steady. The girl didn't move, but her mouth opened just slightly, like she was about to say something. Instead, what came out was a soft wheeze, not a breath, not a voice, just air escaping from somewhere it shouldn't. I turned, ran for my truck, and slammed the door so fast the sound echoed through the empty fields. My hands shook as I fumbled with the keys, dropping them twice before the engine finally roared to life. When I looked up, she was gone. The road ahead was empty, the shoulder bare under the glow of the single flickering light. My headlights cut through the fog, illuminating nothing but the quiet shimmer of frost. I sat there for a long moment, breathing hard, convincing myself to move. Finally, I put the truck in gear and started down the road again, eyes flicking to the mirrors every few seconds. Each time, the reflection looked normal, just my headlights and the open stretch behind me. But then, around the next bend, something caught my attention. There was another streetlight, bent, old, its light dimmer, and beneath it another figure. This one looked farther away, smaller somehow, but still the same. Pale jacket, dark hair, same tilt of the head. I pressed down on the gas, heart pounding, but when I blinked, she was closer. No, not her, but something shaped like her. My vision blurred for a second, and when it cleared, there was nothing but empty road again. By the time I reached the next town, I was gripping the steering wheel so tight my hands hurt. I pulled into a gas station, parked under the bright lights, and just sat there. My reflection in the glass door looked hollow, eyes wide, face drained. I told the clerk inside what I'd seen. He looked at me for a long moment, then asked quietly, "What road?" When I told him, his expression changed, not surprise exactly, but recognition. "That road hasn't been open for years," he said. "There was a slide last winter, wiped the whole stretch out. You couldn't have been driving through there." I stared at him, trying to process that. "I was just on it," I said. "You could see the mile markers, the lights." He shook his head slowly. "Those lights haven't worked since the storm." I didn't argue. I just walked back to the truck, my breath clouding in the cold air. When I got inside, I looked at my GPS. The last 30 miles were blank, just a straight line cutting through nothing, no turns, no side roads, no service routes. It was as if the map itself didn't know where I'd been. I sat there for a long time, engine running, watching the snow drift lazily under the streetlight outside the station. I tried to convince myself it had been fatigue, or maybe I'd turned off onto an old maintenance road without realizing. But every time I blinked, I saw her, the girl under the light, her head tilted, her eyes blank and waiting. It's been 3 years since that night, and I've avoided that part of Montana ever since. But sometimes, when I'm driving long stretches in the dark, my dash cam flickers on by itself, a soft blue light blinking at the corner of my vision. And when I check the footage later, there's always one frame that doesn't belong. A stretch of road I can't remember driving, a broken light in the distance, and a pale figure standing by the roadside waiting for someone else to stop. There's something about the night that changes how we see the world. Roads stretch longer, shadows move slower, and silence starts to sound like memory. The people in these stories weren't searching for trouble, they were just trying to get home, to reach the next turn, to do the right thing. But sometimes the road keeps what it wants. And sometimes it's not the things you pass that haunt you, it's the moments when you almost stopped. Maybe that's what fear really is, not monsters or ghosts, but hesitation. That single heartbeat where you don't know what's right. When instinct whispers keep driving and guilt whispers go back. It's a strange comfort knowing we've all been there in our own ways, standing at the edge of something unknown, deciding which kind of regret we can live with. If you've made it this far tonight, maybe part of you understands those choices too, that small pause before turning off the headlights, that glance into the rear view when the road behind you feels heavier than it should. These stories are reminders, quiet ones, that the world doesn't always sleep when we do. Stay safe out there wherever the road takes you next. And if you find yourself alone on a long, empty stretch after midnight, keep your lights steady, your doors locked, and your thoughts quiet. I'll be here again soon with more true stories whispered from the dark. Good night.